Welcome to video number 20 for Control-Shift-Enter Mastering Excel Array Formulas. Hey, we're in the workbook Array Formula DVD book start on the sheet topics. Wow, do we have an amazing video here. This is going to put it all together, extracting concepts from video 16, unique count concepts from video number 18, and even the mamult we learned last video number 19. We're going to see how to extract unique lists and look at sorting formulas. All right, I'm going to click on the link for video 20. Now, extracting a unique list. Here is a column, and I need to extract a unique list. Now, if you can avoid using a formula here, you should. Formulas are only for when you have data that is going to be changing and you want to automate the process of extracting. If it's a single time, don't use a formula. Use a pivot table or advanced filter. Here's how easy it is for a pivot table. I'm going to highlight this column and go to Insert Pivot Table or Alt-NV-T. Existing worksheet, and I'm going to scoot way over here into AA, and then click OK. I'm going to drag this ID column down to the row, and that's it. So that's amazing. Pivot tables are amazing. All right, and advanced filter. I tend to use this one a lot. The pivot table has the drawback that once you have it, then you have to copy and paste special values or something like that. But advanced filter will just flat out take a unique list and dump it somewhere else. I'm going to go to Data, Advanced Filter, or Alt-AQ. Now, it's got the right range. I'm going to say Copy to another location criteria. There is none because I'm going to select this down here. You absolutely can do criteria and extract a unique list based on criteria, but I don't want to do that, and I want to paste it way over here. Whoops. OK, well, there was this one. I'm going to paste it right there. Click OK. And then Control arrow, arrow. And there we go. I love advanced filter. I use advanced filter to extract a unique list all the time. Oh, looks like there's a blank there. That got the blank too. Oh. Well, we could make a formula to avoid that, but that's no problem, right? We could filter it or delete it. All right. Now, let's go down and look at formulas. Again, you just don't want to mess around. So, for example, if you had a column and the data is actually changing all the time, or you have an expanding and contracting list of multiple customers or some sort of names, right? You could use a defined name dynamic range, as we learned in video 13, right? So create that defined name dynamic range and then use it. And then as you enter, and there's lots of duplicates and everything, you just have this flat out formula that is expanding and contracting, always showing you a unique list. You could even do something like then use it for data validation drop-down list or something. All right, now we already covered this in great detail in 18. We're going to use the frequency function. Remember, the frequency function is just amazing. It only does numbers, but no problem. We know how to do this. We're going to use the match function, but we also have blank. So I'm going to say if anything in this range, F4, is not null text string, which means empty, then please give me the match. And the match, I'm going to go ahead and use our robust formula in case we have wildcards, double quote, tilde, double quote, ampersand, and then highlight this whole column here, F4, comma, and then highlight this whole column here, F4, ampersand, and then null text string, comma, 0, close parentheses. All that's doing, that's the value of true. That false, I want the actual word false to be put in there, so I'm going to close parentheses. And that data array F9, that's given me all of the relative positions. Control Z. Now I just need all of the relative positions. Row of this. F4 minus row. We saw this back in like video 8 plus 1. That's how to always create an array of relative positions. Control Z. All right, so now I close parentheses. Now this little part here is going to be the internal part that helps us with our count, unique count, and our formula to extract unique records. If I F9 this, look at that. Anytime there's a number greater than 0, positionally that tells us where the unique item is. All the zeros are duplicate. We also learned that we can use the result of the frequency function in the if function's logical test argument. Anytime we see a number not equal to 0, that is a true. All the zeros will be false. So we can use this not only to count, but to get our relative positions for our lookup formula, Control Z. Now, we can simply do sum and then if. In the logical test, anytime it sees a non-zero number, comma, what do I want? A 1. I leave the value if false off because I want that false. Close parentheses and Control-Shift-Enter. That is our unique count formula we learned in video 18. Now we want to apply what we learned from video 16 for extracting records. All right, you ready? I need to turn this formula off when I get past the 4th row. So I'm going to say equals if. And I'm sitting in cell G30. So I'm going to use my number incrementer, G $30 colon G30. And that'll give me 1, 2, 3 as I copy down. Anytime that is greater than my hurdle F4, what do I want to show? Value if true, null text string. Otherwise, please run the lookup formula. So that the array is easy. F4, comma, it's the row number that's hard. Well, no problem. We either use aggregate or small. I'm going to use small this case. This time here, small. And I want row numbers here. So I'm going to use an if. So for the array, I don't want all of the relative positions. I want just the ones that have the unique records. So for array, I'm going to say if. And lo and behold, the logical test, the string of trues and falses, comes from that frequency function. So I'm going to paste this logical test. Then the value of true is just our formula element that creates all the relative positions. But that little bit right there is the hard part, right? I'm going to Control V. Oh, that looks so huge here. But just realize that's just delivering trues and falses. Remember, they're non-zero numbers and zeros, but value if true. Now I'm going to cheat here. I have this formula element that creates all the relative positions already somewhere else in that formula, so I copied it. All right. That big huge thing is just giving us the trues and falses. Now I need to type a comma and go to value if true, Control V. All right, I'm going to quickly close that off because the falses will help us there. And that array right there, F9. Wow, 1, 2, 6, 7. Those are exactly the relative positions of our unique items that the small function can then deliver to the index as a row number. Control Z. Absolutely amazing. Now, the K, I already have that here. It's my little number incrementer, comma, K. Close parentheses on the small. Row number, it's just the small. You could be using aggregate. I like aggregate, but not everyone has 2010 F9. There it is. That's the first one. When we copy it down, small will get the 2, and then the 6, and then the 7. Control Z. Now, row number, close parentheses on that. The value of false, it's just our lookup formula to extract as we copy down all of our unique items. F9, so the very first one is of course, that one. Close parentheses, Control-Shift-Enter. And copy it down. Absolutely amazing. If I delete all this, I got that there. Control-Z. If I change this to Sal, absolutely amazing. All right, let's go down and look at our next example. And here's the deal. That's a big, huge formula. If we could have a helper column, we could make this much more simple. Let's scroll down here. Now back in video 16 when we talked about extracting records, we saw lots of great helper column formulas. Now here's the deal. At the end of video 18 for unique count, we saw a countifs formula with an expandable range. But here we have a single column, right? So I'm simply going to say countif, and I'm going to put an expandable range in that range argument, comma, and then that as criteria. Now I got to come back over here. That's not an expandable range. I need to lock the 54, but not that 54, so F4. All right, so the range will expand as we go down. The criteria will only give us a count of 1 when it sees the item for the first time. Control Enter. Drag it down. Absolutely beautiful. Unique, 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 unique. Now, we know from video 16 that when we have duplicates, this is our lookup column, right? There's duplicates there. That means we have to do an array formula over here. But we'd like to have a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. And we saw how to do this before. We can simply first convert this to a true and false. And then we'll use our sum function trick. So I'm going to say anytime that is equal to 1. Control Enter. There's our logical. Anytime we have a comparative operator, we create that logical formula that delivers trues and falses. Those are the duplicates I was really talking about, not the ones. Now we simply come up here and we wrap our sum because we want the add, the cell from above. The sum function is great because it'll allow us to ignore that text, comma. There's the number, which is just true or false all the way down. Right now, nothing, because sum will ignore it, plus true is 1. As I copy this down, this true plus that one will give us 2. Right here, this false plus the 2 from above will give us 2. So boom, there we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, just as we saw before, cool, the count formula is just max. Give me the max of that. And then our lookup formula is a straight index. And the row number is match, looking up the 1, 2, 3, 4 in the lookup array, which is our helper column. And the trick is, how do we get just the first one? Exact match 0. Absolutely awesome. So this is amazing. None of that a big, huge array formula, just a simple helper and a straight lookup formula. Now let's scroll down and we'll look at our next example. Very similar. We have IDs here, but we don't want a unique list of IDs because then these two, we'd only get the first one. We want to extract the entire record. So our concern is, do we have a unique record? These two are unique because they have different dates and different calls. These are not, because all 3 elements of that record are the same as all 3 elements of that record. All right, 3 columns to check. We're going to use a concatenated column to group together all 3 bits of information in a single column. And then if any one of these cells are the same, we'll know that the record is a duplicate. Now, we saw how to do this type of concatenation earlier, a few different examples. Now, you could just join it, boom, but it's safe oftentimes to separate the 2 bits of data with some character. Now, I'm going to copy this because I'm going to use this a few times. Control V, and there we go. Those 3 bits of information, Control Enter, are put together. Double click and send it down. We can clearly see that these 2 are not the same, right? The date, the serial number, and the number of calls are different. Now, that's our criteria. We could just, it'd be nice if we could just use countif with an expandable range. Remember this? And we could put our concatenated joined bit right here in the criteria. But the problem is this range argument can't handle array calculations. And we're actually going to have to join 3 columns. So I'm going to come down here. So again, it would be nice if I could use that as the criteria in countif. But I can't. So I'm going to use sum product. Now I'm actually going to type in a comma and keep that little bit in array 2, but I'm actually going to not use that array 2. I just want to separate it so visually you see only stuff happening in this first array. We need to join these 3 columns, but they have to be expandable. No problem. I'm going to click on the first cell and then Shift colon and lock the first one, F4. Now I'm going to come here and Control V. There's our little join bit. Click on that cell, colon, lock the first one. Control V, click on that cell, Shift colon, hit F4 key to lock it. All right, so that has 3 columns concatenated together. This is a join array operation. You obviously can't do that in the range argument of COUNTIF. So as we copy this down, it will not only be concatenated, but it will be expanding. Now we simply have to say, is anything in that range equal to? So I got rid of the comma, so now it's all sitting in this one array. Now this is silly. If I hit F9, it just gives me a true because, of course, these are equal to the, it's the first time we've seen that record. We need to convert them to ones and zeros. So I'm going to use double negative, open parentheses, and close parentheses. Now notice, this right now would just give me a 1, right? F9. But as we go down, this array will have more and more numbers in it. Control Z. Let's see how this works. Control Enter, double click, and send it down. So here you can clearly see columns are expanding. If I highlight this and hit F9, oh, so the array as I copy down is expanding. Down here, F9, there we go. So that's a way to get around using the COUNTIF to count in an expandable range when we have an array operation. All right, so now what do we need to do to this? We need to convert it to trues and falses, and it's only ones we're interested in. So anything in there equal is the result of this sum product calculation 1, true or false? Double click and send it down. Now we have duplicates, right? We're interested in the trues, but we don't want to build an array formula over here based on duplicates. We want 1, 2, 3, 4. So we do our trick we've seen before in earlier videos. I say the sum of the one above, comma, and the next number will be our calculated logical as we copy down. Right now, what are we getting? Sum function ignores text. So I get nothing plus true. That'll give me 1. And when I copy this down, this formula in this cell will say what's 1 plus true. That'll be 2. Down here it will be what's false plus 2, 2. So that'll be a duplicate. Double click and send it down. There we have it. These are duplicates. Now we can simply use, just like we did above, now we have a mixed cell reference there, though. And in our match, looking up the 1 in this column here. The 0 helps us to avoid the duplicates. And it's just a regular formula. It's not an array formula. I'm going to copy it over and down. All right, so this solution is not an array formula, but it is a great way to go. Now, next, we want to scroll down here and look at some sorting formulas. Now, the most basic sorting formula is for numbers, right? And you could probably guess we simply use the small function of all the numbers and then use our number incrementer. Rows gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 as we copy down. So we copy that down. If you're going biggest to smallest, you have large. There's all the numbers and then our number incrementer. Now, this is just for numbers, and this is sometimes very helpful. Some of our later formulas will sort the numbers first and then get other data based on that. But here's another example. We want to sort the records based on the number column. So I really want Carlota 20 at the top, then Bellin 20, and then Bellin 22, Quad 35. So sort ascending. Now, we'll see a helper column solution, and then we'll see an array formula down here. Now, how about using the rank? Now, in 2010, they added a bunch of new statistic functions with this new dot extension. Rank is the old function, still works fine. Rank.eq is equivalent. That means it will rank ties equivalent, and average means it will average them. So you can either use rank EQ or the old one. The number, that's the number I want to rank. The reference, that's all the numbers, F4. And then in 2010, they have these great drop downs for descending or ascending. I want ascending. Now, of course, this will give me a tie for a rank. So we need to amend this so that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in this column. I'm going to come up here. And let's think about this. If we did a COUNTIF function with an expandable range, I could get a 1 for duplicates and then a 2. Still further, if I took that same idea, COUNTIF, and in the range, instead of doing an expandable range starting right there, I could start one above, and then colon, comma, and our criteria will be this 22. The advantage of starting the expandable range one above is that when it sees the number for the first time, it's a 0. And guess what? Since rank has given me 1, 1, I'd like 1 plus 0 and then 1 plus 1. If there were other duplicates, I'd have 1 plus 2, 2, etc. I need to lock that F4. And you got to be kidding me. Control Enter and copy this down. All right, so see here the COUNTIF F9 is giving us 0, escape. Here the COUNTIF F9 is giving us 1, escape. Now we just do a basic formula. Notice our helper column gives 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't even have to have something to turn it off and on like an if or an if error because we want all of the records sorted based on this number column. So the only trick is this array right there. It better be, for us, and this formula here, if I just want to use just the row number, hey, that's a mixed cell reference, right? So when the formula copies over, the blue one will move to the count column. And then match, I don't have 1, 2, 3 here like we have had in many other examples, but I use my number incrementer. This gives me 1, 2, 3, 4 as I copy down. The lookup array, that's our helper column. 0, why? Because these are not sorted. Control Enter. And that's a beautiful way of doing it if you can have a helper column perfectly sorted. If these numbers change, it absolutely updates. Control Z. People love these. You know, you have a template with names and scores, right? And so the template's always changing the names and the scores, but then you want everything sorted. Beautiful use for this type of formula. Now, if we can't have a helper column, which is sometimes the case, we can do an array formula. Now, the cool thing is, here we can use our small to extract all the numbers, small in rows, including the ties. Now, our data extraction formula here to get the names associated with these is going to have to deal with ties. Again, if we're doing a lookup formula and you have ties, you're always going to have to do some fancy thing to get around it. Now, I'm extracting all the records, so I don't have to start out with if rows greater than or anything. I just do index. And then the things I'm extracting are the items, F4, comma. Now row number. There's multiple row numbers because there's duplicates. So we're going to have to either use small or aggregate. Here in this example, I'm going to use small. In the next example, we'll have another similar example, and I use aggregate. Small can work in any version. Aggregate can work in 2010 or later. So small. Now, what is remember small, delivering row numbers as we copy them down the first, second, third. So we want ultimately just some of the row numbers. Right now, we want just the ones for 20, right, which would be relative position 2 and 3. So I have a condition here, right? I don't want all the numbers. I want some condition. Now, here's the column with our criteria. Now I'm going to say anytime it's equal to relative cell reference, 1 to my left, comma, and then value of true, it's the same old array of all the relative positions that we've been doing quite often. So the value of true, F9, that gives me all the relative positions, Control Z. Now I can come to the end. The false will be put in. because I left it out. And now the array F9, absolutely beautiful. I have a 2 and 3. When I get down to 22, there'll only be one number here. But again, the beauty of this is you could have lots of duplicates, and small has the right set of row numbers. Now we know we go comma, and the K. Now get this. So far, every time we've had a data extraction formula, we put rows or columns for the K. Think about this. Rows of this cell would give me 1, 2, 3, 4. It would work for the first two, but since 22 has only one relative position, that means the small will be spitting out only a single number. If the K all of a sudden has a 3 there, you get a num error. So in this case, you use count if with an expandable range, close parentheses. Oops, I mean comma. So write expandable range, F4 to lock that. Think about what it does. 1, 2, 1, 1. Absolutely perfect for the K in small. All right, close parentheses on that small. Now we have that whole row number. Again, we've seen this so many times in different formulas. The small F9 is just delivering a row number to index, Control Z. All right, close parentheses. And we definitely have to use Control-Shift-Enter. Why? Because the logical test has a array calculation. Control-Shift-Enter, and double-click and send it down. So we get the same data as up here, but we have no helper column. We change it, it automatically changes. I change this too, and it changes everything. Beautiful. Now, in this case, we're extracting all of the records. But oftentimes, like in sports templates and whatnot, or sales, you're not interested in all of them. You just want to see the top 3 or the top 5, right? The trick here is when you have duplicates, you can't build a formula based on top 3. You can't have it some formula that says, if the rows are greater than 3, then please turn the formula off. Because if you get a tie for third, there could be more than 3 values. So when this happens, you run a count if. And the range argument is simply going to be our numbers. And what are we interested in? Top 3, right? But for the count, we have to say greater than or equal to the third largest. So comma, the criteria is going to be greater than or equal to in double quotes, and join it to the output we get from the large function. I'm going to say, hey, what value in there is the third largest? So this way we can deal with a tie. The criteria argument has a comparative operator join with the output from large. And how many are there? There are 4. Now, this formula in this column is straightforward. Remember a moment ago we said we will use the large and small functions in various ways. Here, I'm just running the large with our number incrementer, and I'm turning it off when it gets past 4. If we had just said greater than, or use this 3 here, we would show only the first 3, and we would have missed one of the duplicates. Now, we're going to do a similar formula to the one we just did above, except we're going to have to turn it off when we get past row number 4. And we're going to have to run our count ifs with expandable range again. Equals if. And you know what? I already have something over here. I could say anytime that is equal to a null text string, because these are null text strings, comma. Then what do I want? Well, I want a null text strings. I want these to show nothing. Otherwise, the value, if false, will be our index. The index, I'm extracting the names, F4, comma. Now we need row numbers. For 22, we're going to need row 1 and 5, right? And then for 15, we need 2 and 4, if my eyes are correct there. So I'm not going to use small. I'm going to use aggregate. Aggregate is in 2010. 15 means small. 6 means ignore errors, because we're going to get divide by 0 errors, and the array. Well, I'm interested in the row number, so I have to do our formula element that always gives us an array of all of the relative positions. All right, and I have to put it in parentheses. Then I have to divide by our criteria. Anything in here, F4 equal to the one cell to my left, close parentheses. All right, so comma. Actually, why don't we look F9? Right, 1 and 5. Divide by 0. The 6 will ignore them. The 15 will act like the small function, Control Z. And, comma, the K, count if, expandable range. And I better expand it by locking the first one. By the way, if you lock this one and not this one, when you enter it and copy down, the locked one will switch to here. Right, so there's our K. It'll give us 1, 2, 1, 2. Absolutely beautiful. Close parentheses on the row number. The aggregate is just delivering a relative position or a row number to the index. Close off index. Close off the if. And I don't have to use Control-Shift-Enter. Just Control-Enter. No curly brackets up there. Double-click and send it down. And, right, so if we were to have some other ties, or Control-Z, no tie at all, boy, that works perfectly. Control-Z. Now, all of the sorting we've been doing so far is based on a number column, right? So let's scroll down and see how to sort a sorting formula based on a column with text. So we'd like to sort this whole data set, but have Bellin, Carlota, quad. Now, we're going to use a helper column, and then we have some ridiculously huge array formulas to do this. This is not an easy task. Actually, with a helper column, it is pretty easy. Well, let's do count if. And the range, I'm going to count all of these, F4, comma. But here's the criteria. I'm going to ask the question, less than, and join it to relative cell reference. Now, check this out. We are allowed to do comparative operators on text items, right? Because this is the alphabet. How many of these items in this column are less than a B word? None. 0. These two are a tie, right? So that's going to get a count as 0 and 0. But when we copy the formula down, how many words in this column are less than Carlota? The 2 here. So it's going to get a 2 right here. When we copy this down here, when we get down to quad, how many words are less than quad? 3. Now, that's not going to work, but we can amend this formula. What I would really like is 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, guess what? If we add an expandable range and count if that we've done a few times already for a unique list, I could say how many Bellins are there? 1. How many Bellins are there? 2. But since it's counting a relative cell reference, I'm going to get 1, 1, 2, 1. And that's perfect. It's adding 1 to everything. And anytime it sees an extra duplicate, a second and third one, it'll add 2, 3, etc. So plus, and then our count if, our expandable range. And I lock this, right? 1, 2, 1, 1. Absolutely awesome. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have a straight lookup function here. Relative cell reference for that blue range. Match has number incrementer, and it's looking through this column right here. Control-Enter. None of this is array. This is just a cool helper column and a straight lookup function. Now, this uses a helper column. Let's see how to do this without a helper column. And this formula is going to get pretty wild. We have straight text here, names in a column. And actually, I saw this formula, learned it from Richard Scholar at the Mr. Excel message board. Absolutely an amazing formula. Now, I've done some unique count formula here. So I know I can turn this formula off when I get past the 4th row. Now, just a moment ago, we did count if. So one of the inside portions of this data extraction formula is going to be the count if, F4, comma. And guess what? The criteria argument is going to be the same or similar to above. The same part will be we use less than, and we join it to the whole column. So whereas above, we copied the formula down and got a bunch of cells with values, right? Now we're going to have Because, by the way, that criteria argument, we're doing 2 array calculations. We've done an array join operation, and we put 8 values. I think that's 8 values into this criteria argument. So, of course, 8 values in criteria, then the COUNTIF will spit out 8 values, F9. And what this says is, since chin is the smallest amongst all of these words, there are how many less than it? 0. There's 1, 2, 3 chins, so there's 1, 2, 3 zeros. The zeros are in the position where that item is. Now, if we use the match function to look up 0, right now it would tell me position 2. And then I could use index, and it would take chin and put it right into this cell H152. But of course, that wouldn't work if we copied down. But let's think about this. When I copy it down, who's the next person sorted here? It's Phil. And look at this array. If I was looking up 0, match was looking up 0, what would I have to subtract from that number right there, Phil? What would I have to subtract to get a 0 in that position when the formula is down here? I'd have to subtract 3. And guess what? How many chins are there? 1, 2, 3. So just to show you here before we do the little formula element, let's just see what happens if I subtract 3 from that whole array. This COUNTIF is spitting out an array. I'm allowed to subtract or do any math operation on a single number, right, on the array, F9. There's the 0 in position 1. Let's take it one step further. What would I have to do, F9, to get a 0 in the 4th position? Because Sheila's is the 3rd name I need to extract. Well, of course, Control Z, I'd have to subtract 4. So if we could do that, if somehow we could subtract 0 and then 3 and then 4, as we copied our formula down from this array, we'd always get a 0 in the correct place, Control Z. Well, guess what? We're going to use another COUNTIF. I told you this was a wild one. And the range of things we're going to be counting is all of these names, F4, comma, and the criteria. Well, remember, I need 0, and then 3, and then 4. Well, right now, what if I just put in the criteria, this range, and it's going to have to be expandable, and lock this? Well, right now, how many names are over here? 0. But when I copy this formula down, this COUNTIFs will be down in H53, right? And it will be looking at chin's name from right above. And how many chins are there? 1, 2, 3. Not only that, but when you get down to H154, where it should be extracting Sheila's name, this range here will expand. And now it will be looking at chin and Phil. Well, criteria argument, if it has 2 numbers in it, it's going to actually have 3. It'll have a 0, a 3, and a 1. What's 3 plus 1? It's 4. So I simply need to add a sum around the COUNTIF. Now, this is an amazing little construction right here. As we copy it down, the array of numbers containing our zeros will be changing. That whole thing right there is going to be lookup array inside of match. Remember, we want to look up a 0, comma, in that lookup array, comma, exact match, whoops, comma, 0, close parentheses. So the match now is going to be inside of index. Index is what is looking up these names, F4, comma. That whole thing is inside, is going to calculate the row number. Match with a 0 lookup value and this changing array. Now, it'll be easier if we enter this. And this is an array calculation. There's one right there that's going to require Control-Shift-Enter, and a bunch of, and another one also. So Control-Shift and Enter. Wow, that is so amazing. Now, here's the magic, right? When you get down here, and let's look and see what COUNTIF is giving us. This is the expand line. Now it's looking at names and chins and counting how many over here. F9, it's giving us 0, and a 3. The sum is going to add, well, the sum will add it. Let's go down here to this one. COUNTIF is going to be spitting out F9, an array of numbers. The sum is going to add them. And from our, this is all in the lookup array for match. Boop. And so now I F9 this. And the 0 has changed. It started off in second, then it went to first, and now it's in 4. Match is looking it up. Match will deliver F9, a 4 to the index. Absolutely amazing. Now I'm going to click Escape because I did a bunch of F9ings, and you only have one undo in edit mode. Now all we have to do is turn this off. Equals if, and I'll use my number incrementer, rows H $152 colon H152, close parentheses. Anytime that is greater than our hurdle F4, then comma, the value if true, null text string, please show nothing, comma, otherwise we'll take that lookup formula and calculate it. Control-Shift-Enter, double click and send it down. Absolutely amazing. If I come over here and type Tommy, Tommy appears at the bottom. If this is now Abe, Abe is at the top. That's amazing. It's like sorting and getting rid of the duplicates and extracting a unique list. Control-ZZ. Absolutely amazing. Now, this formula will not work on empty cells and not going to work on other types of mixed data. And the COUNTIFs take a long time to, so we have some array calculations here. So if we could have an alternative formula to this, that would be great. Now, if you thought this formula here was wild, wait till you see this next formula. And this next formula will handle the mixed data and empty cells. And actually, this formula comes from Dominique at the Mr. Excel message board. Now, here's our data set. And we'll add a blank a little bit later. But right now, we have this data. And the problem is if we use COUNTIF on this mixed data, it's just not going to work. So here's the question we're going to ask. And then we're going to get a formula to answer the question. I want to ask how many of the other items in this list is this one greater than? Now, this text item is greater than 1, 2, 3. If I ask the same question here, hey, thing, how many other of these other items are you greater than? The only one this is greater than is that one. So if we could get that information, it would be great. And the way we're going to do it is we're actually going to take this data set and transpose it, and then compare these different orientated arrays using an array calculation and getting a row of 0, 1, 1, 1, which will represent 0 for this item right here. This item is not greater than itself, but it is greater than 1, 1, 1. So the 0, 1, 1, 1 will be orientated horizontally. We will then gather them up using the mult function like we learned in last video into a column that'll say 3, 1, 2, 0, representing the number of items that it's greater than. We can then use that positional information to extract a unique list. Now, let's just do this in the cells first. I'm going to transpose this data. I'm going to type my formula to compare this range. And I'm going to say anything in there, array greater than this. Now, these are two different sized ranges. There's 4 rows here, 4 columns, so it will result in a 4 by 4. This is not doing the matrix multiplying. This is just straight. And we haven't seen a comparative operator, I don't think, done on 2 different arrays like this. We did subtraction and multiplying, but this will work. And I want to convert them to ones and zeros, so I'm going to do +0. Control-Shift-Enter. And as we talked about last video, gathering up a bunch of things in a row, adding them, we saw how to do that with a mult function. All we need is, well, this is a 4 by 4. We need a single column with 4 rows of 1s. Multiply those doing matrix multiplying, and we have our deal. Now, how are we going to get a column of ones, I'm simply going to say, hey, all of those rows, that gives me 175 to 178, but we raise it to the 0. Last video, we saw how to do this with columns, right? And then we can simply, to gather up, just as if we had these numbers next to our cells, we use the mult and take array 1 times array 2. Control-Shift-Enter. And there's our 3, 1, 2, 0. Now we have to do that all in a single cell. Watch this. Mult, the first array, I'm going to say, oh, this, are you greater than transpose? And I do have to put that, let's put that in parentheses, and plus 0, comma, and then our second array, there's our first array. Our second and our first array is F9, that whole thing right there, Control-Z. Our second array is going to be row caret 0, close parentheses. Now that, of course, will give us the F9, all in a single cell, right? I'm going to Control-Shift-Enter. Now, one other bit that we have to do, in case there's any blanks, we're going to have to replace that range and that range with an if statement. And here's the if statement, equals if anything in here, and I'm going to hit F4, and I should copy this because I'm going to use it. Anything in there is not empty. Please give me that whatever's in that range. Close parentheses. Now this little if is going to go in place of that range right there. Control-V, Control-V, and then I forgot to lock these. You're kidding me. This is huge. F4. Now this F9 is still giving us the same thing, but it's more robust. It's going to deal with the blanks. Guess what? We're going to have to use this a few times in this formula over here. So I am going to Control-C to copy it, Control-Shift-Enter, Control-F3 to open define names. And I want to create a new name. I'm going to call it BT, for bigger than. Highlight down here, Control-V, click OK. Ooh, I can already see there's a problem. Sometimes with bigger formulas, it thinks it's not legitimate, and they put double quotes in. So I'm going to make sure I get rid of those. And then I edited it down here instead of clicking the edit, so I'm going to click the check. And then there we go. Click close. Let's check it. Equals BT. It looks like it is working. If I highlight this and hit the F9, oh, that is amazing. So BT is what we're going to use over here. Now, this is going to get tricky. All right, before we create our lookup formula right there, I want to move these values over here just so we can see them while we're creating our formula. All right, index, we're going to do lookup. In the array, these are the values we're trying to extract. Comma. The row number is going to come from match, and match is going to be looking at these numbers in that BT range. But the trick is, as we copy down, I'm going to need the first 0, or the 0, the position of the 0, the position of 1, the position of the 2, etc. So match. And the lookup value is going to be tricky, but the lookup array is that BT. And I'm going to go ahead and put my 0 and close parentheses. All right, so what in the world are we going to do here? Well, we're going to get the minimum value from here. But as we copy our formula down, we're going to need to exclude values that are already used. So I'm going to have the min function here and two if conditions. One's going to say not empty, and the other one's going to say it hasn't been used yet already from our extracted list. All right, so in the lookup, I'm going to say min if, and then any of these, F4, not empty. And then comma, I have a second if, and the second if is going to say I haven't already extracted it. Now, how do we compare two lists? Back in video 18, we saw we could use isNA and match function together. So I'm going to do that here. IsNA and then match. Now, wait a second. We're comparing a list that hasn't been extracted yet to this full list. And guess what? The lookup array is going to be all of the values. Yes, there's going to be an array argument calculation here, F4. And I'm going to compare all those values to an expandable range from the cell above. So now I'm going to colon, and then comma 0 for that match. And right here, that lookup array needs to be expandable. So I'm going to lock that first one. Now what this is doing is, this is how you compare two lists. Here's all the values. That's all of these. And this is expandable. Well, right now, is the word extract over here? No. So all of these values are still up for grabs, which means all of these numbers are up for grab. But what happens if I come over here? You can see that I need to put a close parentheses. The is an a. And by the way, the match is going to deliver 4 values because the lookup value argument has 4 values. So the is an a will give an array of trues and falses, F9. Right now it's all trues. But as I copy this formula down here and it sees the first item, which will be this, it'll exclude that. And these will be the only ones available for the min function, which means then the min will pull the 1. Control Z. Now that's the logical test. So we have to come to the end here. Remember, the min has 1 if, 2 if to isolate, and then comma to put just the values we want, BT. Now I can close parentheses on the first if, close parentheses on the second if. And here, that min, I'm looking at that purple one. I need to put one more right here. You know, if I type it here and I got my I right here, I can see that it's bold. All right, so I think I missed that one. Now, that lookup value when I hit F9 should give me 0, which is exactly what I want. None of them have been isolated, so min's looking at all the values. Control Z. Now I just have to come to the end. That's the match. So I come here, close parentheses on the index, Control Shift and Enter. You've got to be kidding me. Now I want to come here and look and see what in the world this is an a is giving, because that's one of the things that's isolating which numbers we pick. F9. So now we have true, true, false. So that one's been eliminated. Control Z, Escape. When I come down here and look at the logical test, remember, it's comparing two lists. You can see that expandable range right there. That's the expandable range. We're comparing to an array argument calculation right there by comparing this to this. F9. So now we see false and false because that one has been eliminated and this one. That means that number and that number are eliminated, so the only two numbers left are 3 and 2. I'm going to Control Z. And actually, let's see if we could, inside the min, this should give, this is an array calculation, 2 ifs and an array of values. So when I hit F9, now I have a false, false. The 3 and the 2 are the only things being plopped into the min. And that's what match is using, right? F9. So it's looking up at 2. And what values are here? F9, 2. That exact match is helping us out there, right? Because it's not. But that is a pretty wild formula. I'm going to click Escape. Now I'm going to do one last thing. If rows are number incrementer, I'm in B 183 colon. Anytime that is greater than this 4, F4 comma, then double quote. Otherwise, wow, that big huge thing right there. Control Shift and Enter. So and then delete. So robustify. You know, we didn't even check this out. If I put delete here, this this one shows all zeros. Control Z. If I start putting numbers here, right? Then it just goes wild all over the place. So Control Z, Z. So that form is awesome because it's a little bit easier than, but you have to have only text data and no empty cells. Whereas this one, Oh man, that is one big huge formula, but it seems to be working. All right, video 20, that was all about extracting unique records and sorting formulas. When we come back in 21, I can't even remember what 21 is. Oh, conditional formatting with array formulas. All right, we'll see you next video.